All right, horror hounds, and welcome to an episode of This Just In. Today we're going to be going over the Rob Zombie Halloween remake. So, after the financial unsuccess of Halloween Resurrection, they let it sit for a few years. And they decided they're going to do a remake of the original, and we're going to give it to Rob Zombie, and he can write, he can direct, he can do whatever he wants because he's pretty popular with these Firefly family movies. So let's give him a shot and see what he can do. I know a lot of people dislike remakes. I find some are good, some are okay, and some are bad. There is ones that I hate. You're going to find out this is not one that I entirely hate. I remember liking it more when I was younger, but on a rewatch, I do have some changes of thoughts on this movie. Alright, so starting off right off the bat with the ends. Michael Myers. This is probably, I don't know to compare him to the newer movies, but this might be my favorite portrayal of Michael Myers. Not the kid Michael Myers, but grown adult Michael Myers. He's huge, he's played by a pro wrestler, so he's big, he's muscular, he's just vicious. This is, I keep saying how in some of the movies, like, he keeps getting more and more brutal. This might be as brutal as he gets. Maybe Halloween 2 by Rob Zombie, he may be more brutal in. Or Halloween Kills, he might have been more brutal in than this one. But he's still extremely brutal in this movie. So I love his portrayal in this movie. Even the kid version isn't terrible. There's some scenes where he's meh, and then there's some scenes that it's good. So I do think Michael Myers throughout this film is one of the high points. Second is the kills. Rob Zombie knows how to shoot kills. So Rob Zombie, he has a very good directing style when it comes to how he shoots things and stuff like that, like the cinematography. And in this movie, the kills, they just feel, I don't want to use the word brutal, but that's kind of what comes to mind. Like, these feel real. Like, this is the most impactful. And he, like, when it hits, the way he shoots it, it's like you feel every hit, every stab. And he just lingers and lingers and lingers on it. Right off the bat, you got this kid who's an asshole to Michael Myers when he's a kid. And in this timeline, his first kill is this kid. And he just sits there and beats him to death with this stick. It's a big stick, so it's not like a little twitch. But he beats him, and we just sit there while he's beating him and beating him and beating him, and it just stays on him. And you get those weird cuts across his face where you can see like the blood pouring out, and it's close up on the guy's face. And you can hear the wax, but you don't see the wax, but you see his body arch in pain and everything else. And it just sits there. And then he does that a lot in this movie. His sister, when he kills his sister's boyfriend, beats him with a baseball bat. It just shows him just wailing and wailing and wailing. And there's blood everywhere on that floor. When he kills his stepfather, Ronnie, duct tapes him to a chair and slits his throat. And you can just see him staring down at his stepfather while his stepfather's staring up at him while the blood's pouring out of his throat. Even when he kills his sister, instead of going in her room and stabbing her a bunch of times, he ends up being all weird. Then he stabs her in the stomach. And then we see her crawling down the hallway, and that's when he's just slicing her and slicing her and slicing her. And then when they talk about it, they said she was stabbed 17 times. Ronnie, we only saw a throat slit, but they say he was stabbed in the face and in the chest a bunch of times. Even when he's in the mental asylum there, he kills a nurse with a fork. That one's pretty brutal. He kills a bunch of guards. Does a good job there. And then when we get into Halloween, more like the original, most of those kills are all pretty good too. And even the people who survive, they go through hell. Rob Zombie loves to make his characters go through hell even if they're going to survive. The last positive for me in this movie is the score. I mean, Rob Zombie does Now he's a metal artist. He makes a bunch of music, so he knows how to play a good score. He has the Rob Zombie Halloween theme is pretty close to the original, and some of the other sounds that the original movie had is little nods. They have that in this as well, but then he also throws in some good rock stuff that fits the situation also. Things I'm mixed on in this movie: acting. Some of the people I like are good. Some of the people are terrible. Ronnie, I don't know why his lines are what they are, but I hate that guy. He plays the character well for what they're going for. I just don't understand why they would write a character like that. Even Michael's sister, who dies, even she has some good spots and some bad spots. In the second half, the first friend who dies, the one who was having sex and gets strangled in the original, gets strangled in this one. She's okay. Like, she's not knocking anybody's socks off in this role. Dr. Loomis, I didn't like his portrayal in the first half of the movie, but in the second half of the movie, I did, because there's a big swing in his character as well. And then my other thing that I mixed on is the ending of this movie. So we get the traditional beats, not even close. Rob Zombie decides he's going to do something completely different than the original one, so Laurie's in a basement. And then Michael walks up to her, and she's scared. He drops his knife, and he shows her the picture of them two together when they were kids. And she grabs a knife and stabs him. So then this means Michael's now going to try to kill her because he thought he had it good with her, and he doesn't. So they wind up getting out of the house, and she falls into a pool. An empty pool. Should make that a point. There was no water in this pool. But Dr. Loomis ends up shooting him 3 times, and he falls. And then we go out to the vehicle, and they have that. Was that the boogeyman? I believe it was. And then smashed through the window. So they took how the last movie ended with the boogeyman talk, and they used that as like a swerve, which good for Rob Zombie. I'm glad he was making something a little bit different. But when he does that, they end up going up the stairs. They go into a house, and Dr. Loomis tries to stop him. He ends up crushing his head. Not enough to kill him, but enough to make him pass out. And then Jamie's kind of hiding around, goes through the attic, falls down. She ends up stealing Loomis's gun. And she's at the top of the stairs at one point in a room, and she's pointing it while she's all groggy looking at Michael, and he ends up plowing through her with a spear out the window, off the balcony. Should say spear like it's a wrestling term, not an actual spear. And then it fades to black. And then when it comes to, she's waking up, and she still has the gun in her hand, and she's kind of cradling or straddling Michael. She points the gun at his face, and she's click, 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 and nothing's coming out. And then when he finally comes to and tries to grab her, she shoots, and the gun goes off in his face. And you see her covered in blood, just screaming like she's gonna have PTSD, and this character will never be the same again. Alright. Things that I am out on in this movie. For the first half of the movie, the dialogue. Yep. I don't need to hear the talk of Rob Zombie throughout this whole film. It is so weird that it's not completely drastic, because in the second half that kind of mimics the first half. We do get these lines that are similar, but nothing as bad as what that first part has. I mean, he's calling Michael probably queer. He tells Michael's mom he's going to skull fuck her. He tells her that her daughter has a nice dumper. He mimics and mocks Michael the entire time, calling him a sissy. And Michelle. And I don't know, just that character, all the dialogue he gets is just atrocious for this. Like, I know Rob Zombie has a specific taste, But Michael Myers does not have trailer park trash in his filmography up to this point. And I don't feel that it adds anything or that I appreciated the dialogue in this movie. It didn't make anything more better. And the backstory of trying to make it seem like he had a bad childhood, this was like over the top. Just way over the top. And then Michael's sister has a line where she asks him if he stroked his rat to death, and she's jerking off some glass bottle looking thing and moaning. And then, for the most part, you get some screaming and yelling back and forth, but that's probably the worst part of the dialogue. Another part of this movie that I was actually out on, which may be a surprise, but I actually hate the person who played Laurie Strode in this movie. I don't like her acting. She comes across Laurie Strode was the traditional good girl, and you wanted to change her up a little bit. Whatever, she has some sexual lines here and there, but this girl screams nonstop, screams and cries nonstop. Never does she seem like she's getting the upper hand, being smart like a final girl. I don't know. Maybe it was all the screaming and the crying for the last half hour of the movie, because the ending act, the last act for Laurie and Michael, has got to be a solid 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And she spends the entire time screaming for help or crying and screaming for help. And it's sometimes you get a character who screams a few times, and then maybe they feel like, oh God, nobody's ever going to help me. Not this one. This one's just going to scream over and over again. And I just couldn't stand it. Alright, so my overall thoughts on this movie. This movie, as a remake, it's okay. It's not a fantastic remake. It's not a terrible remake. I've seen much, much worse. But I do like the brutality. I do like how Michael's portrayed in this. And I do like the way Rob Zombie shoots his films. I am usually a pretty big fan of most of Rob Zombie's work. And his dialogue is in all of his movies. But in this one, it doesn't fit. It just does not fit with Halloween. You can't have all that canon, and then I know you're starting over, but redneck hillbilly skull fucking is not where we start. We could go a little bit toned down from that. Although, we'll see what he does in the next one. My overall rating on this movie is just going to give it a 3. 3. I find it more entertaining to watch than most of the original ones, but it's still no masterpiece. And I know a lot of people feel like it really fucks with the lore of Halloween. I think he was going for something different, and I'll give him a little effort for going for something different, even if the backstory doesn't fully land. And I do wish the time where we see Michael as a kid till he becomes an adult, there was some interactions in there. I wish there was more. I would have been almost more happy with a longer section in there, and then maybe the ending he went for was an extended version of chasing Laurie, and everything was condensed. So I think he could have cut 10 minutes off from that trying to get Laurie. We could have expanded out the time that Michael was in with Dr. Loomis speaking and stuff like that, and gotten a little bit more in there, and that could have been a little more fun. Alright, guys, if you can, give me a like, subscribe if you're not already a member, leave some comments down below on whether or not you like the Halloween remake by Rob Zombie, or if you're one of those people that hates all remakes, or maybe you just hated this one. Hit the notification bell so you can see when the next one comes out. Next one we're going to be doing is Halloween 2 by Rob Zombie. I do remember that I did not like this one before, but we're going to give it a rewatch with a fresh set of eyes and see how it compares now that we've been binging these things and seeing what is bad and what's good. Till the next one, rest in peace.